Although China's number of reported COVID-19 cases is stabilizing overall, some countries are starting to sound the alarm bells. According to the World Health Organization's latest report from February the 23rd, over 78,800 cases have been confirmed in a total of 28 different countries. Meanwhile, South Korea, Iran and Italy reported sharp surges over the weekend. In the face of this growing global threat, Chinese President Xi Jinping said right now, unity and cooperation is the most powerful weapon. He also called for greater collaborative efforts by the international community to fight the epidemic. So what do the new cases say about the importance of international cooperation and solidarity at this point, and what further efforts should be taken? Joining me from Chongyang, northeastern China, is Mario Cavolo, founder and CEO of M Communications Group. We're also joined via the telephone line in Beijing by Han Hua, research fellow at the Chongyang Institute at the Renmin University of China. So welcome to both of you. To the point, a very quick update on the situation. Over the last 24 hours, there are a global total tally of 78,800 confirmed cases and over 1,000 new cases reported. Among the 1,000 new cases, some 650 came out of China, and some 367 come from places outside of China. In China, the number of patients, people who died from the disease, was 97, unfortunately, and outside of China, a total of 6 new confirmed deaths have been resulted from this virus. Indeed, the situation is stabilizing in China, but is looking pretty bad in different parts of the world. And I want to start by talking about this letter, actually, Chinese President Xi Jinping wrote to U.S. philanthropist Bill Gates to thank him for his foundation's contribution to China's battle with the coronavirus. This foundation has committed to donate up to $100 million in emergency funding to help China battle the epidemic. So in his letter, President Xi called for strengthening international cooperation, saying mankind is a community with a shared future to prevail over a disease that threatens all. Unity and cooperation is the most powerful weapon. Meanwhile, WHO Director General Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus has also called for solidarity by international community instead of stigma. So Mario, let me go to you. How do you look at the level of solidarity we have seen so far?
Thank you, Liu Xin. I look at the level of solidarity. I'm happy to point out tonight the sacrifices and the contributions which show where the solidarity is. Well, we know where the solidarity isn't, don't we? And that's continuing to be a problem. But tonight, we be positive and talk about 3 situations that come to my mind. First of all, locally here, great in Liaoning province and Shenyang, we're leading the way back to no new cases in over 10 days. I think 21 provinces in China in total. Yesterday only reported 18 new cases. So we're moving in the right direction. Here, for example, the Shenyang Commercial Bureau, I know they're doing tremendous work on the ground. On to the international community and solidarity. Here on the ground in China, real people, foreigners, Americans, and from all over the world, on the ground with American Chamber China. They just sent out an update to all of us members today. Over $470 million in cash donation, a million RMB, excuse me, in cash donations and in-kind donations and contributions and gatherings of necessary medical equipment. Tremendous, because we're here in the real world with real people on the ground, and that's where this is about love and compassion, not politics. And then another example, the Entrepreneurs Organization. Entrepreneurs from all over the world here in China who have, I don't have exact numbers, but undergone tremendous efforts to, again, support the real fact of this is a crisis for people, for families, and they also conducted an excellent survey to get a clear picture of how this is going to impact businesses moving forward.
Yeah.
A lot of solidarity.
Right. Okay, Hanhua, let me get your take on this question, because yes, we want to be positive, and we definitely should acknowledge the huge amount of solidarity that has been shown. And yet, Hanhua, how do you look at the level of solidarity? And I don't just mean in the form of donation or encouraging words, but also really to sit down and work together with China, with the countries that are currently challenged by this virus. How much are you seeing, Hanhua?
Good evening, Liu Xin, and hi to Mario. Yes, I think, in my opinion, international solidarity is put into place almost the same time when the outbreak began in Wuhan. First, there are scientists from many countries rallied together to identify the virus under the guidance from WHO, and in China in particular, the CDC's efforts to lead this kind of scientific research, but with the help from the scientists from many other countries. And they have also brought the respective governments into attention. Then there are the countries who have been providing, donating, supporting in many ways to the people in Wuhan, like the Bill Gates Foundation has been doing, and also people in China. So there are the second level of this international solidarity. We have to mention that there are government efforts and civilian support, etc. So I think the essence of the international solidarity is that people who help out the other people are also helping out themselves in the long run, fighting against the virus.
All right. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just joined on the line. I'm joined actually via satellite by Blackburn-Dwyer, president of the consulting firm Grasshopper Strategies. So, Brandon, thank you very much for joining us. How positive are you about the level of joined efforts? You know, not just solidarity, but also real work that is being done, because clearly, from what we are seeing, the trend of the spread of the virus, everybody is in the same boat. Do you think at this moment we're doing what we can, or the world is doing what they can in terms of helping each other, in terms of cooperating and collaborating with each other? Brandon? Oh, it seems Brandon is not hearing me. Mario, let me ask you this question then.
Yes. Sure, Liu Xin. I'm seeing how, I'm going to take the last 24 hours as a wake-up call, which is causing a greater unity and solidarity. Because we've seen that the virus is, I'm going to use the phrase, vectoring geographically. We've gone from China. There's suddenly a news report in Italy about the 10 towns in northern China, northern Italy, who've locked down that, for example, Codogno, I believe, is one of the cities. At the same time, we go back to the Southeast Asia, and we hear the reports of the rise in Japan and South Korea, and we're over to Iran. That's an interesting picture, isn't it? All of a sudden, you've got these places all over the world and united by a common problem. I think if I was the Iranian people and government and the Italians, I'd be on the phone with China going, hey, you guys seem to be really good at getting this under control. Help us out. What do we do? Let's all pull together and work together before this thing gets any worse. So I think the last 24 hours is serving as that wake-up call toward this unity and solidarity. We're going to see a huge increase in this unity and solidarity in the coming days.
I definitely hope so. I definitely hope so, because actually, as we speak, probably there is still this press conference going on by the WHO experts advanced team who have been touring in China in 4 different places, and they have been giving this press conference in Beijing to brief the public about what they have found so far. And let's listen in what the head of this team, Dr. Bruce Aylward, has been saying about what China has been doing.
But what we found was, even though every province was suffering outbreaks and was getting infected, the governors were prioritizing the movement of medical teams and PPE out to Hubei and Wuhan. And that's a very important message for the rest of the world about how we work in the kind of solidarity and collaborative action that's going to be needed to beat this virus. And it's the opinion of the Joint Mission, after looking at this very, very closely and in different ways, that there's no question that China's bold approach to the rapid spread of this new respiratory pathogen has changed the course of what was a rapidly escalating and continues to be deadly epidemic.
Right. So basically, and I listened to not a small, a section of this press conference, especially when Dr. Aylward was talking about China's efforts. He was extremely positive, extremely. He used words such as extraordinary effort, or he talked about China's very impressive agility, and China's way is the only way that works. Right. And unfortunately, when you go into the Q&A session, when the first foreign journalist stood up, it was this BBC journalist. The only question he was interested in was where China failed. I mean, okay, I think it is the responsibility of a journalist to find out, what went wrong, and possibly other countries can avoid that mistake. But at this particular moment, when the world is trying to deal with this problem, as Dr. Aylward pointed out, speed is the biggest lesson, and he said he's not necessarily sure whether other countries are learning that. So, Hang Hua, let me go to you, actually. Do you think the world is in the best place to, take the best lesson or experience out of China at this moment, after China having experienced this period of time? Is the world ready to learn to, take the relay forward?
I share the concern with you, Yoxin, because you mentioned the very first question raised by the BBC reporter was like, what China has failed in what particular area, because this is the very critical moment of communicating the right message, or the positive message, all the lessons we drew, the Chinese government, the Chinese people has drawn from the lessons, the very slow beginning in Wuhan from the local level. So we need to pass a complete picture or message out to the world, to people, to the other countries where there are already some outbreak or symptoms of a possible outbreak in some countries. So I think there are some obstacles in this international solidarity, if I can mention that. The obstacles are not from virus, which I believe human beings will contain one day in the near future, but it is certainly from human beings themselves. There were reports with discrimination of Chinese or Asians. There are also even the racism activities towards Chinese in some countries, and they are really disturbing, and even will create a huge bottleneck for these countries, for the people in other countries, when they are preparing themselves for the possible outbreak of the virus.
Okay, let me go to Brandon once again. Let me try, because one of the things that Dr. Aylward was mentioning is he's concerned whether countries around the world are picking up their phones and phoning the Chinese and ask, what have you done? What did you do that worked? Tell us about it. And he's said he's not sure whether countries are learning that, and that could be a very big mistake if they don't. So, Brendan, what do you think? How do you look at the kind of barriers in international cooperation, solidarity, collaboration that could prevent the world from preparing themselves better in dealing with this case?
Well, we start with a world that is very unprepared generally for a pandemic. This is not a pandemic. This is an epidemic. An epidemic is smaller. It is more regionalized, more localized. But the world, as a health organization, even in the most developed nations in the world, there are strong concerns about how prepared hospital systems really are to deal with mass outbreaks of any sort. When we had the Ebola outbreak, we had real concerns about not just the health structure inside Africa, but around the world, and how we dealt with passengers coming back that had potential infections, and how we actually quarantined them. When we go back to SARS in the early 2000s, we also look at even, for instance, Canada, dealing with the fact that they, in the short term, were able to quarantine certain people, but their legal systems meant that after the quarantine, many people got sued and were punished in courts of law for violating basic human rights. So we have a global system that I think is still grappling with how do you balance human rights? How do you balance civil rights? How do you balance public order with a desire to, at times, lock down large portions of the populations, at times possibly react and even overreact in the sense of safety to try to stop the spread of a potentially dangerous pathogen? And the world is looking at China, and they're very concerned. They see Wuhan get locked down, and on one hand they go, wow, that's a really bold stroke, and on the other hand they go, I'm not sure we can actually do that at home. And I think that balance is what the WHO director is getting at.
Mario, your reaction, because indeed this is a very important question. Basically, everybody, every human being, every citizen is part of this. You know, if we say, okay, I don't want to get tested, I don't want anybody to bring me to any isolation area because I have my rights to stay mobile or to go wherever, then you have a huge problem. If 1.4 billion, or let's say 12 million people all do that, then there's no way to contain a virus. Mario.
100%. You live in a society. Sorry, you don't have a choice. You have a responsibility when you live in a society to make whatever contribution may be necessary, even if it's an outlying contribution at times in that society. Just like touting free speech, where, you know, that's the big tout in the West. Free speech, the greater freedom you have comes with greater responsibility, doesn't it? And we all know that. Now, here's what works and here's what doesn't work, and exactly in line with what Brandon just said. Okay? Here's what we know works. We do not need to think about overloading the hospital system. If we have 21 provinces in China with 1 billion people, and yesterday there was only 18 new cases, that's borderline miracle. Why? To avoid, it's the step up front. Do what Mom said. Mom said, don't touch the elevator buttons, don't grab the door handles, wash your hands frequently, run away from someone who sneezes, get away, get away. You know, isolate yourself. Mom was right, and this is just an extreme version of Mom was right. Do what China has done. We did it in Liaoning. We've been home for 3 weeks. It's been wonderful being with my boy, by the way. That's what to do. No, Lucian, I have to say, here's what not to do. In Costa Mesa, California today, a federal judge ordered an emergency order to stop an emergency quarantine order. A federal judge blocked emergency quarantine order in Costa Mesa, California. That's what not to do.
Well, there are a lot of nuances, different cultures, different circumstances, different laws. Of course, you have to look at it in a different way. But I think the lesson, what Dr. Bruce Aylward was highlighting, was the aggressiveness and the agility that China has demonstrated that is possible within China's framework. And every country would have to take that lesson and use that, adapt that into their available toolbox or systems that's you know, that allows. Anyway, we have to leave it there. Many thanks to my guests, Mario Cavolo, founder and CEO of M Communications Group, Brandon Blackburn-Dwyer, president of Grasshopper Strategies, and earlier Hanwha Research Fellow at the Chongyang Institute of the Renmin University of China.